Joining me now is Virginia Democratic Senator Tim Kaine. Senator Kaine, welcome back to the show, sir.
Great to be with you. Thanks.
Let's talk about Stephen Breyer for a second. First, before we get to replacing him, his legacy as far as you're concerned.
Well, Chuck, I mean, 40 plus years, 14 years as an appellate judge, and then nearly 28 on the Supreme Court. I mean, that's a significant public service. I had a chance once to have dinner with Justice Breyer as part of a huge banquet in Washington. Yeah. And the guy is so learned. We sat there with others talking about what was the most influential work of art in the 20th century. And he could deliver a really persuasive case on virtually any topic, encyclopedic in his learning. And the court will miss him. But President Biden has a superb opportunity now to put his own stamp on the court. And I'm excited about that.
It's a great description of Breyer as learned. I have, in the few times I've had, I feel the same way. You're like, my God, he's just one of these interesting people. He is the perfect dinner party person. And I say this not as anything other than you just can't believe the level of knowledge that he has. Let's move to what President Biden wants to do. Look, we're going to have an African-American nominee. He's promised that. What is the importance of identity to you on the court, number one? And then what's the next criteria you're looking for?
So the reason the identity issues are important, Chuck, is that the court for so long only pulled from a very tiny part of the American talent pool. So if, for example, his nominee is a woman, well, then you might have this situation. Wow, 4 women would be on the Supreme Court. That is astounding in one way. But when more than 50% of our population is women, it's a long time overdue in another way. If it's an African-American woman, I confronted this when I was governor in Virginia. For a number of years before I got there, it was sort of acceptable to have one African-American on the Virginia Supreme Court. And I was like, well, why does it just have to be one? Why not have 2 African-Americans on the Virginia Supreme Court? And so I put an African-American on and broadened who was on the court. And so I think the identity issues one day in the future of our country, they may not be so important, but we still have so many institutions that don't really look like the population of our country looks. And that's why I know that President Biden wants a court that really is more reflective of who we are as a nation.
What are some issues that you would like to see dealt with that aren't the ones we always deal with Supreme Court nomination, right? Which is usually precedent, abortion, that usually is the front and center, maybe the role of federal government, the sort of the larger philosophical role of the federal government versus the states. But what is something else you'd like to get at here? And do you see a distinction between some of these potential nominees that are interesting to you? You have one possible person who's not Ivy League at all. Is that something you think the president should consider? What else are you seeing?
Here's some things that interest me, Chuck, and I've only started to just kind of superficially analyze the names that I'm seeing. You have a couple of people who were district court judges, and they tried a lot of cases as district court judges. That's really important because the Supreme Court often is rendering decisions that essentially are telling the lower court, state courts too, how to try cases, how to deal with evidentiary matters, how to deal with confessions, how to deal with police misconduct claims. And finding judges that have a deep background of either having tried cases or been trial judges can be really helpful because a lot of the court's docket is ultimately about that. I'm intrigued when I see judges mentioned whose experience has been on state court benches, not just federal court benches. So one of the candidates is the Supreme Court justice in California. That used to be more common. Justice Brennan was a state Supreme Court justice. Justice O'Connor came off a state appeals court. It's been more common recently to go with judges from the federal bench. But I think judges who have significant state court experience can be important because, again, a lot of the Supreme Court's docket is review of state statutes to see if they comply with the federal Constitution. So I think that can be an important experience. And what President Biden has done already in his appointments to the lower courts is he sort of broadened the professional background. Federal public defenders are getting on the bench. That wasn't the case. Private practitioners who did civil rights work are getting on the bench. That wasn't so often the case. So before we even get to issues, I think looking at people's diversity, not just as demographic diversity, but diversity in life experience and their professional careers are really important.
Let me ask you this about the sort of the state of the Democratic Party right now, the state of the Democratic Senate, and how's everybody getting along? Is this an opportunity to sort of calm the waters? Do you view this as an opportunity to sort of lower the temperature, maybe Build Back Better can get negotiated without everybody watching while everybody's attention is on this? Is this a useful interruption, if you will?
You stated it, Chuck, even better than I would have. I do think it's helpful. Look, I was really disappointed that we fell short on voting rights. I was disappointed that it took us so long to get the infrastructure deal done. Now that we have it done, I think we're going to see it being very helpful. And I do think we will get a version of Build Back Better. I call it education and workforce because to me, that's the core of it. I think we'll get it done. And you're right. Sometimes it's easier to close a deal if everybody's focused on something else rather than the closing phase of those negotiations. I'll also mention, as we're grappling as Democrats with what could be a challenging midterm, look, this economic growth number today, you add that up to unemployment declines and wage growths, and we still have some challenges, but I see the signs together with some of the health data of a kind of great American comeback that we might really be living and experiencing in a powerful way come spring. I think a successful battle over a highly qualified Supreme Court nominee could add to that uplift.
I'm 70% there with you, and then I just see news of a new variant that people are discovering, right? And then you're like, who knows? We can hope the corner gets turned.
We're not going to be done with COVID, anytime soon. But I have a feeling we're going to be living more normally with COVID as huger percentages of people are vaccinated and have natural immunities. I think that it would be whistling past the graveyard to say it'll be entirely in the rearview mirror. But I think the thought that we're living more normally with it and more comfortably with it come spring, I think that's very realistic.
Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat from Virginia, former governor who's done his share of appointments to the courts. Thanks for coming on, sharing your perspective with us.
Absolutely.